All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the premiere episode of the Mr. Shield podcast. I'm Jason Perry. For those of you who don't know me, former Navy SEAL, former Boston SWAT, executive protection specialist, a bunch of other things, as well as the founder and CEO of Trident Shield. And this is Chase.
Hi, I'm Chase Welch, former Marine Corps, and I'm here to help Jason.
Chase drives me insane, but he's here to help keep me sane on this because, as you know, you guys would get really tired of just hearing me. So what is the Mr. Shield podcast? Well, to be honest with you, I've been struggling for a long time to walk that line between, hey, when I'm being Trident Shield and I'm speaking on behalf of Trident Shield, and what can I do as, as me as a citizen who has opinions. So in an effort to kind of separate myself from the company, but at the same time, talk about all the things that we do at Trident Shield, we decided to step away and create a separate podcast, that is going to be me, and it's going to be real. It's going to be my opinions. My goal of this podcast is to educate, right? So we're going to talk about current events, breaking news, and reviewing products, everything that you want to know with the ultimate mission of protecting the ones you care about, whether it's your family, your church, your school. But at the same time, we want to be engaging and entertaining, and we want to be real. Right. I want to give you the best advice I possibly can. Now, our goal is to not be divisive here. So we're not going to call names. We're not going to do all those things, and again, my whole goal for this is to try to help heal the divide and educate on a lot of issues like firearms, profiling, self-defense, all those challenging topics that are around self-protection, as well as, law enforcement and the challenges that law enforcement handle. And we're going to be bringing in different guests all the time. So if you're the great thing is now with this new cool equipment we have, we can take phone calls, we can do all kinds of different things. So we're going to move towards that. So, for everybody who's in the Central Virginia area, or wants to commute here to be on the podcast, I'd love to have, everyone on here. And I'm talking to, local guys like Mike Frugio, who wants to reflect on, on all things, on whether it's, being a former law enforcement, being a Christian, all those different things, because, those are the things that we can talk here. I'm a Christian, we're a Christian-owned company, and I can't really, put that out there too hardcore on the Trident Shield channel, just because we don't want to turn anyone off. So again, here we can really do that, and really dive into, what does it mean to be, prepared, and that's really what this whole this web podcast is going to be about. One word: preparation, and entertainment. So without further ado, there's some things I want to talk about today. There's been a lot in the news. We've actually been trying to go live since 9:30 this morning, but with technology comes challenges. So we're finally going live now. And so we want to talk about the ABC hot mic story. We're going to talk about the attack on the Americans in Mexico. We can talk about the election that we had last night
in Virginia, and
nationally, really. But we had some, obviously some results that some people are happy or not happy with, and basically go through everything. I'm going to be monitoring on the phone everybody who's kind of watching this. So if you got a question or a comment,
I've got the Trident Shield stream here as well.
Right Awesome. So I've got Mr. Shield open here. He's got Trident Shield because we're doing it simultaneously at both places, and I would love to be able to answer those questions. So again, we're going to start I'm going to start a watch party. I have no idea what the heck a watch party is, but and go from there. So.
All right. Well, while Jason's doing that, we can start off. Let's start off with some local news. Just sort of hit that first. And so, national elections results are still coming in, but it was an interesting. I'll be honest. I was a little surprised by the results. I don't know why.
You're talking about Virginia?
Yeah, specifically Virginia. It went pretty much. The Democrats completely cleaned up in the House and Senate for Virginia, and I thought it would be a little bit more break even, maybe in the House, but it was pretty much a clean sweep over there. They got the majority now, and so that does make me a little nervous, being more conservative or libertarian leaning anyway, at least with some, I'm always a fan of just people having more freedoms and being able to control their own lives as individuals a little bit more. So, you weren't surprised when we talked about that this morning coming in. That wasn't a surprise to you at all. So why was that?
All right. So let's get real. What we're all really concerned about in Virginia is your Second Amendment rights.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone, there's no need to, dance around it. Everyone that I can't tell you how many phone calls I got today of people saying, man, the election yesterday, Jay, I'm going to buy an AR. What do I got to go buy? Or I'm going to go buy, X firearm, something like that, because I'm afraid of, losing it. So I wasn't surprised about the election, to answer your question, just because we're so close to the swamp here. Mm-hmm. That Nova and Virginia has been trending blue for a long, long time. Yeah. And it's really, really hard to separate that. And I just don't think there's enough people in the county. And you got to also remember is that this was not an election, like the presidential election. Yeah. So turnout's always terrible. Yep. And who is the most motivated when someone else is in power? The opposition, right? So the way I look at it is if it was, when Obama was in office, we had a bunch of Republicans turn out for the mid-years. Right. And then now that Trump's in here, it's motivated that. And it's unfortunate because as conservatives, or a lot of people who are conservative, by nature, they stay away. They just want to be left alone. Mm-hmm. And politics today is not that. Right. I mean, you got the mainstream media that we have to fight tooth and nail every day. Yeah. Right. Because that is really driving the narrative to the, people who are not plugged into the issues. Yeah. There's so many issues that we could talk about here today. We're not in an event to turn this into a political conversation, but all right. Had several folks in my watch party until politics. What? It's now a watch party of one. Anyways, so again, we're not trying to talk politics. We're trying to talk it. We want to talk about everything and what's most engaging. Yeah. So now let's get into the rest of this. We wanted to talk about, some things that really blew me away, which was the ABC hot mic thing where, I mean, holy smokes. You have Harvey Weinstein, and that ABC had the dirt on him 3 years ago and the story got tanked. And, we're going to try to do some wizardry here with the ABC Hutch story and kind of go from there and see what you guys think. Hopefully you guys can hear this and we can go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this live.
It was what we had was hopefully unreal. Other women backing it up. Hey,
I think we started a little bit further into this, so I think I got to wait for it to play out.
There will come a day when we realize Jeffrey Epstein was the most prolific pedophile this country has ever known.
Basically, I'm sure everyone's seen this story as it's out there.
For 3 years. I've had this interview with Virginia Roberts. We would not put it on the air.
I think it's replaying.
First of all, I was told who's Jeffrey Epstein. No one knows
and what I want to do is I want to shrink this down and make this scale.
Found out that we had horrible allegations about Prince Andrew and threatened us a million different ways.
So they can actually see us. There we go.
There we go.
So there's some modern technology. If I can actually get it to move now, that would be awesome.
So if you guys haven't seen this,
Alan Dershowitz was also implicated in
Amy Robach, for ABC's news anchor, she was getting ready to go live on, I believe, the Good Morning ABC. I forget what show she hosts, but anyway, the point is she was just talking to the crew and some fellow anchors this morning about the pretty in-depth journalistic work she did 3 years ago working on this Epstein story, and was basically told by
so pissed right now.
We don't have enough information to say who exactly at ABC said, hey, don't run with this. But they had interviews, they had apparently some documentation to back up with their witnesses and people who had come forward proclaiming, and for whatever reasons, which I'm sure will still
realize Jeffrey
we'll come to
Epstein
light
was the
here
most
soon.
prolific
She was
pedophile
told to
this
go ahead and just sit on the
country's
story and not run with that. And she was pretty upset by that because obviously this is a story,
I've had the story for 3 years.
you know,
I've had
as
this
a
interview
journalist
with
and as a
Virginia
woman,
Roberts.
she's pretty
We did not
passionate
put it
about,
on
you know,
the
this
air.
was as she
First of
says
all,
here
I
at the end of
was
this,
told,
that
who's Jeffrey
they
Epstein? No one
expect,
knows who that is. This is a stupid story.
you know, Epstein would be the most
Then
prolific
the palace
pedophile in
found out
U.S.
that we
history.
had
If everything comes out, and so you know, I can
threatened us in
understand that being
ways.
very upsetting to her, and that's an upsetting story for I think
We were so
for
afraid we wouldn't be
all
able to
Americans. That's
interview
just a
Kate and Will,
it's a
that we-
real
that also
unfortunate
flashed the
situation,
story.
and so it's very interesting
And
to see.
then,
I will be very
Alan
interested to see
Dershowitz was also
if ABC
implicated
ever
because of
releases any
complaints on-
information on
she
why
told
they
me
decided to sit on the
everything. She
story.
had pictures,
Well, the thing that really
everything.
appalled
She
me
was in
about
hiding
it
for 12 years.
is
We
she wasn't
convinced her to come
appalled
out.
that
We
this
convinced her
evil
to talk to
guy
us.
was doing this. She
It
was upset that she
unbelievable
missed
what
the
we had.
scoop.
Clinton.
You think that was more of what it
Oh
was?
my God! Yeah, she's like, and we had it, and we had it, and we had it, and she referred to that over and over again. Like we could have been the ones that broke it. How about there's a monster, right, doing horrible things to children,
every day
and
I get
powerful
more and more
people doing
pissed because I'm
horrible
just
things
like,
to children.
oh my God.
Why do we make that our concern rather than who
we
breaks the
had
darn
was
story?
unreal.
So they're
Other
getting
women
video
backing
audio
it
as
up.
well as ours.
Hey.
Okay,
Yep.
they're getting both. Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
Brad Edwards,
All right, so I'm going to clear
years ago
that,
saying,
and we can,
like,
you know,
like,
talk about on
there
this.
will
So,
come a day when we
you
will
know, and
realize
again,
Jeffrey
so
Epstein was the
that's
most
what kind of
prolific.
bummed me out about the whole thing is that one, yes, we could have stopped and prevented this years ago,
Right.
You know, which would have been fantastic. You know, but unfortunately, it got buried. The powerful get buried. Hollywood is in bed with that. You know, we've all heard of the whispers or not so quiet whispers about people talking about pedophilia in Hollywood and all those things. And you know, unfortunately, it's a reality.
Sure.
You know, obviously, you know, like, you know, we heard Brad Pitt talk about it, all these other people talk about it.
Yeah.
And now here it is. And lo and behold, the guy who has the keys to putting everyone away and exposing all these pedophiles who, and unfortunately, they're, you know, Bill Clinton was on that plane dozens of times.
Right.
And went to that island there. And as well as others. I don't have the names. Alan Dershowitz is mentioned and some other people are mentioned on there. And unfortunately, you know, it's absolutely, insane to think that he killed himself in that cell with everything that's coming out right now.
Yeah. Well, so are you familiar with the Rubin Report?
Yes.
So, you know, when he came off every year he does his month completely disconnected and, you know, just goes away, no technology, nothing. And so the owner of the Blaze, what is his name?
Glenn Beck.
Yeah, Glenn Beck. So Glenn Beck actually hosted Rubin on his own podcast when he came back on and sort of brought him up to speed what he missed for the month. And at the time he laid out a couple of things. I'm going to lay out some news stories for you now. And at the end, I want you to tell me if you think they were true or false. And one of those was the whole Epstein murder. And he's like, there's no way that's a true story.
Right.
No one would believe that.
Right.
And he's like, well, let me give you some more details. So the cameras failed.
Yeah, two cameras
failed.
2 guards fall asleep.
And he managed to hang himself and break his own neck with paper sheets.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and of course, you know, Rubin was just like, this is ridiculous. Of course, no one believes this. What a silly story. I know that's fake. And he's like, Glenn Beck's like, actually, no, that one's real. And, you know, what? And so that is just a little shocking that it was sold so straight faced.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, hey, here's 20 minutes of reporting on this. This is completely real. No one questioned this. And onto the weather.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
And so I think that was a pretty common reaction across the country. Then everyone was like, well, what happened to that? Where?
Right,
Oh,
exactly.
sports. And so now I'm glad this is coming out, whether or not, you know, there was a huge number of people implicated on the manifest for that plane.
Right.
Including the sitting president, right? Like so however this goes, right? I'm a fan of the truth coming out in the end, right? So, but I'm really hoping this prompts some much more deep investigation into this because that's such a wacky story.
Yeah, it definitely bears looking at. There's too many inconsistencies and too many people have the motive to do what they did. But anyways, you know, I want to say, you know, shout out to Germany and Danny Carter. I appreciate your support, brother. You've been with us since the beginning. I also have some family on here. Hey, Jerry, it's good to see you. As well. Those are the ones that I'm seeing in the little watch party I started. So I'm sure there's more people on other channels.
Yeah, I got a bunch of people from 1-6 actually from the Marine Corps from my old unit watching too. So
nice.
Hello all, and you know I'm just going to apologize in advance for myself.
So the next thing that I'd like to move on to is this horrible attack that happened in Mexico on some Mormons down there.
Yeah.
Where 9 women and children were killed in a ambush. Now, I understand there's some stuff going on. I'm going to queue up this story. And again, I apologize if it doesn't come across the best or whatever. I'm going to queue up a couple different ones and throw them over here. So the footage you're seeing on the screen right now is footage that I guess the original grandfather of the whole compound basically took of these cars that are riddled with bullets, and you can actually see skeletons in there in the front seat, and it's pretty horrible stuff there. They blurred it out on some of the channels. But, it's absolutely horrible. They're saying, hey, they don't know if they were trying to target these people or specifically. I think it's pretty obvious they were trying to target them. But there's a lot of history between them, Chase.
Yeah.
You want to go into the history of this story, and then we can talk about why the numerous reasons and why nobody should be going to Mexico right now?
Yeah, so it was interesting. So guys, apologize for the delay here. I'm managing a couple different things. For the main chat here, I'm going to throw the story. This was originally aired in 2012 by Vice, and Shane Smith went down to Mexico and actually interviewed the families living down there. So there's a big collective of Mormon families, American citizens as well as Mexican citizens that have been there long enough now. They hold dual citizenship, and they've actually been having a war. Well, war is a strong word, especially for people who've actually gone to war. They've had a series of basically clashes, turf wars, kidnappings, revenge killings, that kind of stuff between the cartels. And in these families, actually, one of the families down there is related directly to Mitt Romney. And so that's sort of during his bid for president, that's sort of when this picked up some steam and got some national attention. And then sort of went away again when he fell out of the race. But they've been down there having problems with the cartels for years. And so it's interesting to see this go down, because is this one of those things where it was what the news is reporting now, case of mistaken identity? Was it a direct, like they had beef with these people and it was a direct, a deliberate attack on them and attacking their families, which again, the cartels are well known for? Or is this just a continuation of something that's been going on since, for the record, really since the cartels tried to start to take over that area? They were in Juarez, the Juarez district. And so Juarez is a city as well as a state down in Mexico. Who knows? That definitely is something that is it's interesting to see, though, that this has been reported on at the national level, years ago, and it's still obviously still a thing. So how much, many things can be true at the same time, right? So maybe this is the family and these guys are trying to get back at them for, all these years, or maybe this is a single isolated incident. Again, feel like a lot of these things we're talking about, it's unfortunate we don't have more information, because who knows, right? But it's definitely, I think it's pretty obvious at this point that there is more to this story than just, an unfortunate case of mistaken identity, because, you've been in, for those of you who haven't been in sort of these super close combat situations, it's not super easy to kill 3 carloads worth of people, and not know what you're doing, right? Like, everyone.
There's reports that somebody, that they actually, one of the girls identified herself. Put her infant on the ground, got out and said, hey, listen.
Right.
And they still motored.
Right.
Which at that point, they'd already committed mass murder. So
I understand you kind of committed to it. And so, there you go. But, there's plenty of reports, especially out of Iraq and Afghanistan, at VCPs, vehicle checkpoints, mistakes can be made. Drivers get confused. It's dark. Singular warning shots or even having to go lethal on a vehicle happens in the United States. It happens around the world. But those are typically isolated incidents where, the escalation of force dictates that it's lethal force at that time. And there's a series of steps you go through and that kind of stuff. But when you smoke 3 carloads worth of people with people getting out and identifying themselves and subsequently being shot, like that's a very deliberate action.
It really is. And so, there's just so much horrible stuff going on in this. You've got little babies, 8-month-old babies.
Yeah.
That are really going through this stuff. So I'll clear this out. Let me clear this layer out. So, so here's the deal. Mexico used to be a great place. I remember when I was in San Diego, we used to drink until the bars closed and then go to Tijuana,
Right.
and then tear that up until the sun came up, and it was never really a big deal. Unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. Mexico is at war, right?
Yeah.
And it is absolutely one of the most unsafe countries in the world.
Yeah.
And you got kids going down to Cancun still. You got people going down there and doing all this stuff. And I'm sorry, I wouldn't take a free trip down there. You couldn't pay me to go down there anymore. I mean, there's just no way. And, now, of course, what's happening with this, right? There's, president wants to get involved. Mexico doesn't want the help. He said he says he wants to declare war on the cartels. The Mexican president says we tried war on the cartels. And that didn't work. So what is left? Like hug a cartel member?
Well, in fact, that's what the current president of his policy is. I believe, and I could get this wrong, but I believe he coined it as the Hearts and Hugs campaign, where there's some sort of, policy of forgiveness and reconciliation with these cartels, saying that, we declared, previous president declared war on Mexican drug cartels, and we saw a huge spike in violence. So, that didn't work. Let's go ahead and just basically hug it out. And that seems, that is crazy.
Yeah.
I don't want to, obviously, right? Like, I don't live there. I'm not saying I have like the finger on the pulse of all the ins and outs of the economic and cultural situation there. But, when you say, hey, we're going to go to war with somebody, right? Quote unquote, air quotes, war, right? And then to see an immediate uptick in violence, like, well, that's what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So really, it demonstrates to me a complete lack in willingness to follow through, because what message is this? And it's just like when we were in Afghanistan, we're like, hey, we're going to fight you. And then 2 months later, we're like, well, actually what we mean is we're going to pay you to not fight.
Right.
And then when we stop paying, they start fighting again. You're like, well, yeah, of course they do, man. Like, what do you think is going to happen?
What really set the tone for the insanity is when the Mexican government captured El Chapo's son.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So literally the number one most wanted guy in Mexico, they capture him. The government captures him. And then they start shooting up so much of the city that the police release him. Yeah. So what precedence does that set out there right now, right? If you go down and you capture, a bad guy, if you throw a big enough temper tantrum and you kill enough people, the Mexican government will set that felon free.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so now the cat's out of the bag. How can they arrest anyone?
Right.
Because now the cartel can just throw a temper tantrum, right? So, I mean,
and that, I understand they had that widespread violence down there over that short period of time. And then did you actually see the group of people who rolled up to basically take El Chapo's son back into cartel custody?
No, I wish I had.
It was,
awesome.
It was a huge number of technicals with mounted machine guns and armed dudes and body armor. They're running radios. A lot of them very clearly know the police they're interacting with, the military guys they're interacting with. Like, they're shaking hands and talking, the straight, like, smoking and joking kind of thing, waiting for the convoy to roll out. So, what would have happened if the U.S. military had a Taliban leader in custody and the Taliban had done this? It would have been a huge freaking gunfight is what it would have been.
Yeah, exactly.
And I understand that they had more, the U.S. military has more assets to bring to bear, but in the moment when the Mexican military is faced with that and they decide, hey, we're going to obviously avoid some bloodshed, we're going to avoid some casualties, we're just going to let this guy go. Why wouldn't they? They're a state actor. Why aren't they bringing in reinforcements? Why aren't they, delaying the situation until they're able to change the tactical environment, right? Like, I don't know, that's a very confusing thing. And again, maybe this is just coming from an infantry guy's perspective, but that's a really weird message to send. Totally. Like, we can basically be outgunned. What?
Yeah. How does the government get outgunned? Yeah. So Scott Torchick, people really need to realize how heavily the cartels are already represented throughout the U.S. And that's true. They have, so much money, billions and billions and billions of dollars. And with money comes influence, whether they filter it through proxies and so many other different ways. I mean, why do you think we haven't built a wall yet?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, we lose. I mean, I've heard numbers as high as $60,000 or 60,000 people a year to drugs and overdoses.
Yeah.
And one of the primary means of emptying is the border. The other is the post office, right? Which is another one. But why wouldn't you close both? Right. So, again, we get so sidetracked in these distractions that, I lost my little brother to heroin.
Yeah.
All right. I've lost friends and family members and teammates to suicide and drugs and into substance abuses. And, that the drug epidemic is freaking real. I mean, it is decimating. I mean, white males right now, our life expectancy is going down.
Yeah.
Like that's really new for the past few years.
Yeah.
And it's because of drugs and because of suicide and because of everything else. And it's just absolutely, crazy.
Yeah.
That we're not like, should be a 5-alarm fire.
Right.
Like, how is this not a 5-alarm fire? Like, how many friends and family members and cousins and nephews and kids you went to school with do you have to lose to drugs before you're just like, hey, listen, we need to do something better? And I think that starts with, one, we're going to have to throw money at our mailing companies, which is, scanning packages because it's coming from China.
Yeah.
Right. A big part of it's coming from China. That's, one part of the problem. And the rest of it is the southern border. Yep. Right. And, the fact that you have people saying it's not humane to try to protect $60,000. Like, I want my brother back. Right. I miss him every day.
Yeah.
And I want the other people that I know that have passed away because of drugs back. And we just don't have the intestinal fortitude to put a border on the wall and then have compassionate, immigration policies. Fine. But let's stop as much of the drugs and the violence and the gang members and everything else as we possibly can. And again, it just boggles my mind that we're at that point. So my main reason when we brought up this story is to show you that, that violence is real. And if you're watching this and us, that's out there. There are evil people in this world, and Mexico should be off your list. And there's a lot of other countries out there that I wouldn't be going to right now.
Well, right. Like we're not taking vacations to Syria right now either.
You're safer, I would say, in Syria as a U.S. member than you are as a U.S. citizen in Mexico right now. I don't have the stats to back that, but I wouldn't think that is too far off.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I know that there's national or worldwide violence stats for each country listed every year. Those typically come out at the end of the year. So we'll see how 2019 wraps up, but it is a hyper violent country, which is sad. I mean, been there with my wife on vacation. There are some beautiful parts to it. I know there's some parts right now that, if anyone from Mexico is seeing this, like, hey, what's up, man? We're not bad here.
Right.
And I get it. Right. But we're not, it's still too big of a problem to completely overlook. And this latest story with the family being killed shows with what impunity they're operating in. And so does the whole thing with El Chapo's son, that just their complete impunity in their operations. And, I understand there's probably lots of really good points on both sides of the aisle. President Trump came out and said, hey, we're willing to help. And the Mexican president said, no, that's not what we want. And I'm sure there's really, really smart people that could make great educated arguments on why we should and also why we shouldn't help. And so, I'm not going to try to get into all of that here. And in fact, if you want more information on that, I'll drop it in the chat. There's a really great podcast between a gentleman named Ed Calderon. He's a former Mexican Mexican cop who did a bunch of anti-narcotic stuff in Juarez. And there's a fantastic podcast there that
is he the same guy that helped take down El Chapo? Was he the?
No, I don't think he was involved. Okay. I'm not sure.
I just remember that there was like one cop or one DEA agent, like in Ohio, who was like the main guy who set that forward. And I'm seeing a lot of local cops, or a lot of cops and a lot of people I've worked with here. And I just want to do a shout out to law enforcement and bring it to the next story that we want to cover today. And that's the war on police, which is raging at an all-time high.
Yeah.
This insanity where you can throw water on cops or whatever the heck it is you want to throw on cops.
Right.
And, and now you're just seeing these cities where our police have been totally neutered and they can't enforce the law and protect their citizens, which is what they want to do. And they're having to look over their shoulder now. It was really bad during the previous administration, right?
Yeah.
There's, if you look at law enforcement, you look at the war on police, there's the most recent phases of it, I would say, is pre-Rodney King, post-Rodney King, and then pre-Ferguson, post-Ferguson.
Yeah, those are big
that's
spikes.
where the big shifts are, and that's where, it became very, very hard to be a cop. And then, Eric Holder going after going after cops more than they went after criminals. I mean, it was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So then you saw a shift in the administration where you now have a lot of support from the administration, but these cities where these mayors and these governors are just really targeting law enforcement, and then you have to deal with the media. The media does more harm to law enforcement, I think, than anything. Every little mistake they make. You've got guys going into impossible situations, making decisions in a split second where there is life and death consequences. They're not going to ever see their little girl again. They're not going to ever see their family or whatever it is that they get up for, and it's just an impossible standard to judge someone by.
Oh, it is. And I think that I think you hit the nail on the head when you said this is media driven. I think it's actually more in the media than it is on, with everyday citizens. I mean, it's really rare I come across somebody who is genuinely anti-law enforcement to their core. I mean, people I grew up with in Crozet, they've had a lot of different walks in life, and some of them have had, been convicted of multiple felonies. These guys have made willful choices to break the law. And even talking to them now, right, they're in their late 30s, they're trying to get their lives on track, all that kind of stuff. A lot of those guys are like, hey, I did a thing, I got caught, that's on me. Maybe they got some feelings personally, like, oh, this cop knew me for 10 years and was, profiling me later. But this is not like a law enforcement statement. This is a, hey, I think this guy did me wrong because he didn't like me or something like that. Even those guys have a hard time sort of just going full bore and saying, no, law enforcement is bad. But people who have no experience probably with law enforcement, have no criminal record, have had never interacted with somebody, maybe even for a speeding ticket, are condemning all law enforcement. Like that's, it's a level of intellectual dishonesty that it's just confusing. Like, how do you, unless you're one of those people who literally will say anything that's on a teleprompter and you're not actually, processing and not having higher order processing on what the words coming out of your mouth, how you can commit to such statements where we have, things like endemic racism and endemic prejudice and across the board, are there racist people? Are there prejudiced people? Are there bad cops? Yes, because they're humans and they're bad humans, and therefore there'll be bad people everywhere. Right. And it's just like the thing, like all politicians are corrupt. No, some genuinely care and some go in caring and then change later. Like, people change throughout life. I don't know. So it's a really, but what we're seeing, probably a lot on social media and driven by that mainstream media narrative is that people are willing, even if maybe not interpersonally, but certainly in the digital world now that seems to surround us, people are so willing to just lump everybody together and make these horrible sweeping statements and then make, policy decisions and funding decisions. And so I decided, I saw 2 years of all this coverage. I really don't like cops. I'm in a position to not donate, or I'm in a position to affect policy that changes funding. And now cops aren't getting body armor. Cops aren't getting training. And you want to talk about having a real problem is stop your police from having the funding to have firearms training and use of force training and
they're
law
already minimally trained though.
I mean, they already are.
Cop shoots like twice a year.
Oh, totally. But like now people are fighting against that even in counties that will remain unnamed that we may be contiguous to, are actually putting artificial restrictions on training facilities, thereby proxy affecting the ability for law enforcement to get its own training, even to train itself, and so it's a really, I mean, man, this is just setting people up for failure.
Yeah, I really believe it is setting people up for failure. And I really believe the media just flames these things. So, even, like Fox News even did it. So, so like when that officer shot that poor woman in her house, the first thing they said, right, the original headline was white cop shoots armed black woman in her own house. Right. Or they actually didn't say armed. They said black woman in her own house. Yeah. And it's like, why did you have to inject that? Like, put it in the story, but that shouldn't be the headline. Yeah. It's a tragedy. Yeah. It's horrible. And then that poor cop, that girl who walked into the wrong apartment,
Yeah.
and shot that guy. And the star witness in that, who was a drug dealer, got gunned down and killed after that.
Yep.
Right. So I'm sure he had no ill will against cops.
Yeah.
Right. So now it's horrible that she went in the wrong apartment. It's horrible that she's done all that, and, I definitely think that she should pay for what she did, but to charge her with murder. Like, I didn't think she was going to be found guilty because of the fact that she was charged with murder, like manslaughter.
Sure.
I can totally understand. She went into the wrong place. She made a mistake and she killed somebody who did not deserve it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I get that, but to charge him to overreach and charge with murder, that it means malice aforethought. Right. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think, I just think it's just terrible. And I think that everyone out there just really thinks that everyone's, that we've all said horrible things. We've all done bad things, and whatever. And to think that everyone's a saint and you can't catch somebody for something they said when they were 12.
Well, right. And that's the whole, people can't change. I mean, did you ever say something stupid when you were a teenager? Yeah. Once maybe. And it is, this is endemic of, again, this whole social media world where people can say something 15 years ago, but because they said it online, it never goes away. Right. That's certainly a thing. But yeah, the legal, and I understand some people may think this is a little bit nitnoid or, drilling down too much, but it is a very different conviction between voluntary and involuntary manslaughter and murder. Exactly. I mean, drastically different. And they carry different penalties.
And they gave her a decreased sentence on that, but she's a convicted murderer now.
Yeah. It's a different thing.
It's totally different. Mm-hmm. Somebody can willingly go out, drink and drive and kill a family at 12.
And they're going to get manslaughter.
Knowing they made that bad decision.
Right.
They chose to drink. They chose to drive. And they knew that they were putting other people. So it's just, again, I think it really, speaks politically to the time where I think 10 years ago that would not have been the case, or even 5 years ago. One thing I do want to shout out. One more. I do want to compliment President Obama, which I don't say very much positive about him. If you know me, I'm conservative. I do try to not talk about that stuff, but was him saying that we need to get over this woke mentality, and that thinking that everyone needs to be saints and everybody, that life isn't complicated. Thinking, and I couldn't agree more. We've all said stupid stuff. We've all done stupid things. I've done more stupid things than most. Right. And thank God I'm still here, and thank God I've matured, and thank God I'm where I'm at. But I really think that we all, again, have to come, if we want to be forgiven, we have to forgive. Right. And I really think that a lot of grace would go a long way. Well, and hopefully, it's going to have to come. To change this narrative, it's going to have to go from the ground up. And actually, something just happened recently. The International Union of Police Associations was who released this story. The Law Enforcement Today broke it originally, but the International Union of Police Associations endorsed Trump for 2020. And that's not a political statement on the presidential election, but it's nice to see that with just some positive talking points at the national level. Reaching down to the police associations in general, they can sort of step around that whole, what has previously been that the gatekeeper, which is the media, and that, and just say, hey, we really appreciate these talking points where, I understand they're endorsing him for his 2020 run. But that's just nice to see that law enforcement in general isn't getting so downtrodden that they're removing themselves from that conversation. And they're trying to stay relevant on the national level, because again, this is, with the media being as prolific as it is, it's already a national conversation. And so them sort of insert themselves in that limelight, or on that national stage, is a nice thing to see. So again, wherever you lie politically within the presidential election next year, it's at least positive to see these people, at that level saying, hey, we're gonna say this is helping us. We have seen tangible positive results, right? And this dude's actually helping us. And they're at least they're taking a stand now, because I think that before, some they would just stay out of it. They stay out of it, or even worse, they'd have, sanctuary cities where, and again, like shit. You're going to go on every political topic of the day, aren't you? Well, yeah, I know, right? but and not necessarily the topic of whether or not you should do that or not, but like law enforcement officials
in direct contradiction of local and state laws, right? Like, hey, I'm all about states' rights. So, but when an elected elected official is like, hey, what I'm going to do is in direct contradiction of my local and state laws, not work to change the law,
right?
But instead immediately contradict it. Yeah, just ignore it because these people are inherently bad.
I can think of a few laws I want to ignore.
Well, can't we all? but now maybe hopefully this will maybe shift it back a little bit where, the police at, local, state and federal levels will all maybe feel a little bit more comfortable saying, all right, we can actually be a part of this conversation. We can represent ourselves positively. We can call out bad policing when we see it, but without condemning everyone. I don't know. I'm hoping that happens because they are going to have to be. They're going to have to get involved because they're getting beat up otherwise by staying out of it.
Well, and I've seen some media companies out there that are starting to represent the police department. But so some of the consequences of this happening is we are struggling to find our next generation of law enforcement officers. I mean, who would want to be a cop right now? I mean, I have, if I was starting over, there's no way in hell I'd want to be a cop right now. I mean, it's the hardest profession in America. You literally work in a zero mistake profession. Zero. You make the wrong decision, you get sued, or you go to jail, or you die. And that's just basically what it is. And, I'm glad to see, that that, at least some of the police departments have gotten out of their own way. I remember, in Boston, they probably still don't have cameras there because the union was against cameras. But, in the beginning, everyone was afraid of having body cameras. And I know there's some BPD on here. So do you guys have cameras yet? I kind of lost contact with whether you guys have cameras yet. But what are we finding with the cameras? That the cameras, more often than not, are exonerating law enforcement.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So I really think that that's something that we have to use. And sometimes they've been, they've shown some bad decisions. And I understand in a zero mistake profession, the last thing you want to do is show your bad decisions. But the vast amount of the accusations are unfounded and proven not true.
Right.
So, again, I just shudder to think of what's going to happen when we have no more cops.
Well, yeah. And who knows if that'll. Hopefully it won't get that far.
I know. I mean, I know that police departments struggle when the economy's good anyways.
Sure.
Right. Because it's guaranteed job security. So when the economy's bad, police level enrollment goes up. Military enrollment also goes up. So to see a strong economy like we have right now, and then the political factor to see cops just, they're struggling. Absolutely struggling. So Barry Dean, too many critics of police officers, both on the streets and in local government. The best leaders support the personnel. Absolutely agree, Barry Dean. Here's the way I look at it. When it comes to a case, tie goes to the cop.
Right. But there's
because they get the
benefit
of doubt because they are there for a noble cause to try to help the public. Now, there has been some extremely rare, horrible officers who've done horrible things, and they've been enforcement arms for drug cartels and whatever and all that stuff. And they're extremely rare percentage of them, right? Yeah. And they need to be prosecuted and dealt with. But the vast majority of tie goes to the cop. It has to be tie goes to the cop. If it isn't, then you're going to have what was happening in a lot of cities, right? Which I can confirm this from people I know who are on the job, that during the previous administration, they're in the height of the post-Ferguson madness, they stopped proactive policing and they would just sit. You'd have 15 cars in the parking lot and they would only go to calls for trouble when they happen instead of being out there and looking for work, which is a huge problem.
And there's, this was in LA, I think, following the,
LA riots?
Yeah, the LA riots. Yeah, the Riding King riots. So following that, in that during that time of chaos, some gangs like MS-13 and other ones took control of some cul-de-sacs and some local gang strongholds and built it up to the point where cops wouldn't go in and in fact had gang representatives. So they call ahead, hey, we're going to go into this is an American city.
To pick up somebody.
To pick up my gang representative so I can drive through because, hey, we got to go get this guy for a court hearing. You're going to escort him with us. What? But I mean, what else were they going to do? Because they would have been, smoked in a heartbeat. Like it's not even a joke. Like it's not like, oh, somebody might try to like shoot at him with a handgun and run by. I mean, they had posts like the people are sitting out there with freaking rifles and radios. Like, you know, you're getting killed if you go in there without permission. And to have that kind of lawlessness in U.S. cities, you know, thank God it's not that way now. But it's just that was nuts to see in such short amount of time how far the policing was pushed back just from a little bit of lack of support from the community. It's a job I do not envy.
Yeah, I again, my heart goes out to you guys. Those of you who stayed in stayed the course and are still in. You guys are the true heroes out there, and you guys are, doing an impossible job and doing well at it for the most part.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah. Next.
You have any questions on your part?
I had a couple in the chat. We had somebody asking, why is there a double standard for law enforcement? Going back to the lady who went in the wrong apartment, and we weren't saying there's a, they were saying it seems like if they're not convicted with murder, then that would be a double standard, saying that law enforcement is basically not subject to the same laws that civilians are. And of course, that's something we answered. It's not that there's a double standard like that female officer made a big mistake. She killed the wrong person. The conviction, the charge of murder has to be substantiated by, like you said, malice of forethought versus voluntary or involuntary manslaughter.
Right. The difference between, purposely saying, being tried for murder, she, makes you think that she went in that apartment with the exclusive thing to kill that guy.
To kill the resident of that apartment.
Instead, she went in there thinking she was somewhere else. She gave him some commands. He didn't comply to commands, and she shot once. She didn't dump her firearm into him. She shot once. The guy ends up dying, and it's horrible.
And there's been cases of this where homeowners have actually had in more urban areas, somebody's goes up for a night in the town, is super intoxicated or something, and actually they break into a home. The home was unlocked, but they break into a home, pass out on the couch. Homeowner wakes up to go to the bathroom at 4 a.m, freaks out and has killed the person in their own home. And in some cases, in at least in other countries, not here, but they've been charged with, their equivalent of manslaughter, not murder, wasn't premeditated, but it's a wrongful killing. Because that person presented no threat, right? And that's the laws of that country. Right. I'm not sure how that would play out. Probably different state to state here, but
it's going to be the castle.
Yeah, probably. But so what we're saying is not that officer didn't make a horrible mistake. It's that, there has to be this distinction, a clearly represented distinction in the conviction and then the charges and how it's, and most importantly, how that's laid out, because the people in the courtroom understand this, but how it's laid out to the public. Hey, no one's saying this wasn't bad. No one's saying this wasn't tragic. What we're saying is it was very specifically this and not that. Because otherwise you get a headline, it goes all over Facebook and Twitter, and people run away with it. And that causes so many more problems than just saying, giving people the facts.
I've got a self-confession here. I mean, I've been in, I went out, had too good of a time.
Yeah.
I was in San Diego and I'll make up some numbers here. I went home after having a really good time, was drunk. Walked home from the bar they were trying to do there. Yeah. Yeah. And, I went to go into an apartment and, I opened the door was unlocked. I'm like, man, I never leave my door unlocked. Right.
Clue number one.
Yeah. Whatever. So I go in my thing and I'm like, I must've just forgot.
Right.
So I go in and I open I remember I walked so clear. I walked in, I opened the fridge and I saw soy milk and I'm like, what in the hell is soy milk doing in my fridge? And then I saw all these things that were
clue
green.
Number 2.
Yeah. So then I saw these things like kale and vegetables and all this stuff. I'm like, what the heck?
Jason doesn't eat vegetables.
No, I'm like, where's my Chinese food? Where's my Mexican leftovers, right? And this girl comes around the corner and she says, what are you doing in my fridge? And I'm like, what are you doing in my apartment? And I remember she was cute. And I said, hi, my name is Jay. She's like, get out. But she could have blasted me.
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Could have blasted me. And I'm like, what apartment is this? And she's like, 301. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I live in 401. I'm the guy walking on your ceiling.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy smoke, man. But that's why, when I talk to people about getting a bedside firearm, having a bedside firearm, is a great thing if that's the way you want to roll. But if you get one, you absolutely should have a light on it.
Oh man,
1,000% do you need a light on the end of your weapon, because once you fire those rounds, you can't get it back. And when you hear that bump in the night and you present your firearm and you light them up, you can see, is it the drunk teenager in the wrong place?
Yep.
Is it one of your family members who didn't want to wake you up and just needed a place to crash?
Right.
There's so many different things, and you're going to see that intent.
Yeah.
Right. And I've heard some bad trainers out there say, you just gave away your position. Please. You just hit them with 1,000 lumens of light in their face, and now
you're
going to
have it will give you that split second to make the decision. And in fact, I encourage people to have one big fan of lights on my guns. All my guns have lights on them, but
have a second one in your hand.
Exactly, and have that handheld, because if it is a family member, a pet, a kid, whatever, you're illuminating the situation. You've gained intel on that, but you're also pointing a gun at the situation.
Yeah, exactly.
So, having that. The internal intuition to say, hey, this is something I have a bad feeling about this. I'm going to start off with my gun pointed at it versus it's probably my dog. I'm just going to hit it with my handheld light. There's some super duper affordable lights out there that aren't, not going to break the bank. They're going to be great for that kind of setup.
Like the one we do in all of our classes, in every one of our seminars, our live events, we blast everyone with a night core. A night tour, like MHGT. I can't remember the name, if you can Google it for me. But it's absolutely awesome. I've got one in my backpack over there. So shame on me for not bringing it out.
Right.
But it's 1,000 lumens, single bulb. Yep. It'll blast you, broad daylight.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's just great. And then if you have a laser on there too, right? One of the things that really drove me crazy about police departments is in their demilitarization is they would set cops up for failure for not wanting, why not have a laser on your firearm?
Right.
Right. Or a red dot sight on your firearm, because if I have a laser and I put it on someone, I can now come off my front sight.
Yep.
Right?
Totally.
Front side, and see, is that a phone in their hand? Is it a firearm? Did he drop the weapon? Was it, what's behind them?
Well,
what's my back?
Yeah. Red dots, they give you, and of course there's pros and cons to everything. And we're not trying to devolve this into a super technical detailed conversation on different accessories for guns, but there are tangible benefits to having certain things with you gear wise. Nothing trumps skill.
No.
Period. But there are some super tangible benefits. In fact, for everyone watching, listening later, I just dropped a great link to the Trident Shield Amazon store, so you can buy all of these things there.
Good job. Good job.
But and you've got the one from Nicor. I run Enforce stuff constantly. They've got a really nice and affordable handheld light that I run. It's the TFX.
How many lumens?
That is that's the 1,000 lumen handheld light. My firearm has it's 800 lumens on my big gun and 250 on my compact. So
Weemal.
Yeah.
1,000 lumens minimum, man. Now they got stuff. It's climbing up there. Like the sun.
Yeah. With those rechargeable batteries, they can push out more watts. So
it's awesome.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
So so basically our point, let's just equip people with the right gear. And if you're going to go out there, and if you're going to go, I don't even recommend that most people go check for the bump in the night. Right. If you're not competent, you're better off barricading in your master bedroom. If you hear something break, and call 911. Yeah. Get into a safe corner, get to cover, and hold on that door. And if a monster comes through the door, light it up. Right. And I've encountered people who were like, I don't know if I could shoot some. More than likely, you're not going to have it. If you put one round through the ceiling, and you say, I have a firearm.
All right, Joe Biden.
Yeah. No, I'm just sitting there. I have a firearm. I know how to use it.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to use it. Get out of here.
Yeah. Right. Yeah,
right now, if they come through that door, now obviously I'm not saying give away your position, whatever. Right. I'm talking about if they're on the other side of the door and there's someone in there. Yeah. Now, obviously, if you have neighbors above you, don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah. Or below you, whatever. Safe direction.
Yeah, be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Yeah. Exactly. Right?
Yeah.
But and that's why I posted an article where an 8-month pregnant woman shot and drove away 2 armed with pistols, intruders in her house who were beating down her husband with an AR. Yeah. And, people are like, why do you need an AR? And I'm like, because it's one of the easiest firearm in the world to shoot. Yeah. You put a red dot on that, within a minute of instruction, I can hand you a red dot, show you how to throw the safety, show you how to load it, and you're going to be hitting what you're aiming on.
Yes.
And there's nothing else like that. It takes next to no skill, which is why it's such an effective self-defense weapon. I'm not saying everyone has to go out and do it. I'm just saying, if you want to defend your family and you're in your house and you don't need something small that you're trying to conceal carry, there is nothing better.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Oh, no, there's, I mean,
shotgun, give me a break.
Absolutely.
Everyone who says shotgun drives me insane. Shotguns require some skill. They have low capacity. There's great, significant recoil.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just not effective.
Well, no, it's not. And for those of you in the chat, I actually just dropped the story that Jason's talking about with that lady, and her husband was beaten badly. And
I saw the picture of him.
He got messed up. And the medical report said that they are still waiting for final results on whether or not he's going to lose either full function or lose his left eye altogether.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was up talking to the reporter at the time, I think maybe the day following the event. But yeah, I mean, she saw what was happening and, you know, responded appropriately. And, this whole, like, what's the best gun for home defense? This conversation could go on. It has been going on almost as long as the caliber debate. In fact, a good buddy of mine who's actually just finished up his dissertation, it looks like. Congratulations, Jamie, by the way. But he shared with me a 1912 article arguing over 45 ACP versus 9mm. So, you know, this literally has been going on forever. So, you know, again, like, I'm not going to make the definitive statement, but in my experience, the largest number of people with the least amount of training are best able to use a rifle, specifically an AR, because, you know, Eugene Stoner and God got together and created the ergonomics for that one. It just works super, super well. Are there a vast host of other weapons you could use? Yes. And maybe there's the debate on, I live in a watermelon next to 30 other people in a watermelon, and I didn't worry about over penetration. Well, then you should probably stop living in a watermelon. I don't know. You know, I understand there's always extenuating circumstances.
And there's a bunch of other things
that you can do about that. And guys, there's super easy access to information. The FBI released, I believe it was in 2008, released an extremely extensive study on ballistics within common building materials for different calibers within the United States. And rifles penetrate the least.
Right.
Like, handguns penetrate more than 308 in a lot of cases.
Really?
Yeah. So, you know, and 12 gauge is just shooting like 8-9 pellets of 9mm down. Like, so it's just one of those things that, you know, do a little bit of research. Don't get caught up in the whole online discussions too deeply. You know, yeah, it's fun sometimes, but this is, again, and this is not advocating for anyone not getting the maximum amount of training they can afford and have time for, or not doing the best that they can. Right. We're never going to advocate for lowest common denominator. But the reality is most people don't have a ton of time or money to put into this. And it is, having a rifle is a really good, you know, it's a great tool. And how we got on all this in the first place was the whole law enforcement thing, I think.
Yeah, I think I started talking about lasers because I recalled, you know, being denied the ability to put a laser on. So I would just... You know, unfortunately, I'd have my laser and lights in my pocket, and I just snap it on when I got to a call. You know, so I mean, you know, I'd rather be written up than you know, than not go home.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. So, you know, we'd love to get some questions from you guys on some things. You know, I want to, you know, I never back down from the tough questions.
Absolutely.
So you can ask the hardest questions out there, and I'll give you my opinion on them. I mean, I'm not saying I'm right. You know, opinions, we all have them, but I'll tell you what I honestly believe with my background and experience, what I think is the right answer. You may find you have a different answer, or you can find a better answer, but I'll give you mine as best of my ability.
Yeah.
You know, because there's so much stuff out there. So, you know, Scott Torchick said the best gun is the one that you are comfortable with, train with, know how to run and get rounds on target. Totally agree. You know, I'm not a fanboy of anything in particular. I can tell you what I own. My pistols are all Glocks. I'm getting ready to possibly consider. I've seen some stuff out there that's made me think about trying out going back to maybe some SIGs. You know, and I've got ARs. You know, I've got a 308, and then I've got a couple 5.56, and then I've got a Benelli M4 12 gauge.
Classy.
Just because,
Italian Thunder.
yeah, I had to have one because the prepper in me, which I'm just starting that journey in a lot of aspects, is like I just wanted to have the most common.
Wait. So for the prepper, you went with a gas operated fine Italian shotgun.
Yeah, I wanted to have 12.
What happened to pump action reliability, bro?
Well, I mean, I'll be able to find as many, pump actions that I can shoot.
Yeah, well,
that the key for me was the ammunition.
Yeah.
I don't find myself, hopefully at the end of days bleeding through tens of thousands of shotgun rounds.
No, and that is something we could do a whole podcast on. Is this illusion people have of these grandiose gunfights, in the apocalypse? And look, starvation and infection are going to get you. And don't get hurt. Like don't get a paper
don't get
cut.
a splinter.
No, you're done. Like the end. Goodbye. Like, don't get in a gunfight.
Yeah.
Like,
that's like the worst.
Oh man. Yeah. So it's definitely interesting to see, but,
you guys talk so awesome, Danny. I really appreciate, the support. Like I said, you've been with me from the beginning, and I can't even imagine what it's like in Germany right now. I know you guys get a lot of issues going on in Germany. A fancy prepper. Yeah. Because I have one from Benelli.
No, sorry.
Come on. They're great firearm. All right.
They are absolutely fantastic. They're so good that when I was issued one in the Marine Corps, I traded it for a Mossberg. Because so that's totally an unfair statement. No, I know they gave us rounds.
You guys couldn't afford Benelli's.
No, we only had one. It wasn't real. They actually gave me a picture of one, and they're like, "Hey, this is something you should have." Oh, thanks, appreciate that. That's good funding.
All right, so some of the talk, like for those of you who joined us earlier, we talked about the hot mic moment on NBC and how a pedophile, ABC, and a pedophile was left to go on the rampage for another 3 years. So one site I want to bring up, and Chase, if you can drop this in there, is what is it? Is it USFamilyWatchdog.us or Family Guardian?
I'll look for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I put it out in all my things. Still encounter a lot of students that carry with safety on or empty chamber. You want to stress why that's not good, why that's not a good idea. Yeah. So, Peter Joyce just brought up a good thing. Good to see you on here, Peter. I am not a fan of having an empty chamber. And for those of you who aren't like firearms people, that means you're going to have to chamber around. So they have it. For whatever reason, there's a couple instances where I can think of why you do that is if you were being like, you couldn't afford a safe and you had children or something like that, which I don't advocate for.
No, I don't. I can't come. Let's ask the Israelis. Any Israelis out here?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why you do this.
You want a firearm to be ready to shoot when you need it. You're not going to want to do, one thing, two things, three things. You're just going to, when you need it, you're going to absolutely want it to work as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There is no
immediately.
He who hits who first wins. That's how that works.
Yes. Right.
So every obstacle you put in front of that, and if you're not, a professional who's training every day and flicking off that safety and flicking that safety back on, doing all this, that's why I run Glocks. Point shoot. Done. Right. Now, the one place where I tell you where I do like a safety is when I'm carrying a pocket pistol, right? Because it's in your pocket, and depending on the holster you have it in your pocket, it can get a little gnarly in there, reaching in there where I like that. Right. But if I have it in a holster in my waistband or in a holster away where it's not, I don't have a lot of traffic going on, and it's the correct fitted holster, not these universal ones, which can be, problematic.
Very.
I like having a safety to go off that, but if I'm going to do that, I'm going to be off, on, off, on. I'm going to be constantly doing that, right? Whereas the average concealed carry person should not be even dealing with that, right?
Well, right. And this goes back to not ever, I would never advocate for anyone not to have the most amount of training that they can get. I mean, always, period.
Sure.
The end, right? Like it takes nothing to drive. It takes, what I'm about to say, right? It takes 5 minutes to have 5 minutes to dry fire a day.
Right.
Maybe like 5 minutes and 30 seconds if you can picking up the gun and clearing
it.
So, I'm advocating for people to invest in themselves because your life is worth it, to put that practice in. But yes, in general, right? Like, man, I've got thousands of hours on multiple different handguns and rifles. And I own one 1911.
You're my hero.
Oh, but Yeah. P.S. I didn't get to shoot nearly as much as he did, ever, because he had funding. Thanks, Marine Corps. Chesty's rolling over in his grave. So, but the point is that, yeah, there isn't. I have a hard time articulating for people who don't live and breathe this stuff to run manual safeties. Just because, like, even there are documented cases out there for even dudes who do live and breathe this stuff. Firearms trainers who fail to deactivate the safety in the moment, right? When they're finally.
Well, there are firearms trainers who
enough.
shoot paper their entire life.
Right.
You know, so again, I don't want to turn this into a firearms.
No, not at all. And we've actually got a couple of questions, and and guys, not trying to not respond to you personally here, but hopefully you can hear us better here. We can be a little bit more articulate than what I can be on here on my keyboard because I can't spell. So getting back to Clark. So Clark, the guy I worked with previously, is a super nice dude. He asked a question previously about why it wasn't okay for the female officer to be convicted of murder versus voluntary involuntary manslaughter. And, you know, I'd given him our previous answer, and he
responded back.
Yeah. So basically saying that, well, the jury, but, you know, at the end of the day, the jury did rule that it met the criteria for murder. And he really thinks that 99 out of 100 times for anyone, law enforcement officer or not, that same criteria would have been met. You know, because basically a prosecutor said, you know, any prosecutor is going to crucify anyone who breaks into another person's house and kills them while they are minding their own business, and rightly so in his opinion. And again, so to get back to what we were saying,
so one, I would not, the one that wasn't breaking and entering, the door was open. She thought she was going into her house. There was no like kicking the door. There was none of that.
Right. So there's the there's the standard by which the civilian would be prosecuted, and then there's a different standard by which law enforcement officer prosecute because a civilian doesn't have any just cause or probable cause to go into someone else's house uninvited, whereas law enforcement officers, under a certain set of circumstances, which were met in this case.
Here's something that I did not know, and I hope this is the key worked in his apartment. So her key worked for his door is what Ian's saying. I can't confirm that, but Ian's saying that. And I know it was right below her. And Ian, you might have just got on here. And I had a story where I did the same thing where I got off one floor too early and went into a girl's apartment by accident. You know, so her key worked in his apartment. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Again, it was a tragic accident, so it should have been manslaughter. And you could even give her more years if you want, but I'm not going to call her a murderer. Right. And I think the anti-law enforcement environment right now where we crucify cops and we act like we don't want to train them. We don't want them to do anything. We expect them to be supermen, snipers, counselors, psychologists, super medics, and brain surgeons on top of everything. And then we want to pay them this much below the Mason-Dixon line.
Just to interject here, good buddy of mine is a corpsman, just called me a boot. So, yeah, thanks, Matt. Appreciate that. I'm a boot to you forever, bro. But yes, and I think the point we were making, Clark.
Thanks, Ian. Ian said he's going to confirm it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the point we were making, Clark, is that in this case, we feel like that female officer got caught up in a maelstrom of anti-police sentiment and was ultimately given a conviction, which will stick with her for her entire life. That was perhaps the punishment didn't fit the crime. Not that she didn't do something terrible, not that she didn't make a mistake, but that given that the totality of circumstances, a civilian would probably have been given manslaughter.
Yes.
And in this case, the police officer, because she was a police officer.
And if you want to get real, and if you want to inject race into that, it's 100% part of that equation.
You went there.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, it's there.
Right.
So, if you flip-flop that, totally different. If you add 1,000 other things in there.
And again, totally please understand, this is obviously like, we weren't there. We weren't in the courtroom. You're right. This is what the jury found. So it's something that's going to stick. Maybe she can appeal it. Maybe she can't. I don't know. But
my thing is I would have given her more time and given her and would have charged her with manslaughter because what they were trying to say is because she made a couple. There's some really dark humor out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Cops and soldiers who deal with death and doctors and EMTs and firemen. I'm a corpsman myself. So you're seeing life and death and you're seeing the worst of humanity. And there's a lot of dark humor that goes on.
Yeah.
And again, if there are saints out there who have never said anything ill about anyone ever, I don't believe you.
Right.
Maybe
Good for
Mother
them,
Teresa,
but also no.
Maybe Mother Teresa or whatever. So, you know, it was a terrible, terrible thing. That woman's going to live with that the rest of her life. I wouldn't be surprised if she killed herself, you know, and it's horrible, but I just don't think murder was appropriate. So,
well, right. And so anyway, moving on, we had a question from Kate. She was asking, do you recommend having multiple types of handguns or keeping them all within the same brand? And do you recommend revolvers or semi-automatics? So Jason, you want to take that?
Yeah. So one, depending on how much you can train, right,
and afford,
and afford, I say you train with things that are the most similar.
Right.
So you're not operating on different systems because who has time to do, something all the time except for Chase. He's practically doing stuff and messing around because that's what he does. The rest of us have real responsibilities and jobs and stuff. And we have
what's a job?
Yeah, exactly. To where we actually have other things to do. So I would keep it simple.
Yeah.
Having multiple versions of it. Yeah. So that's why I like Glocks, for example. You can stay in caliber, and if you stay in stack, you can shrink the gun down, and they all work exactly the same.
Right.
They'll take the same magazines.
But does it take Glock mags? Right. Like, but that's become a meme out there because the Glock is so prolific that when other platforms are released, people want to know, but can I use my Glock mags? Because I have so many Glocks and so many Glock mags. It's a huge cost savings.
Yeah.
But that joke is really, there's an underlying truth there.
The genius behind what they
absolutely,
did,
yeah.
which was, hey, most of us, most of you guys out there aren't tier 1 operators and are going to be out there practicing on the gun range in your backyard every day. Right. I mean, that's just not reality. So keep it simple.
Yep.
Right. I think
absolutely.
you have to have, if you're at a minimum, I think you should have a rifle, an AR based platform or, whatever, and a pistol that you know how to run.
Yeah.
Right. And then keep it simple. Don't inject a ton of different crap into there if you're not going to have time to train on it, or else the day you're carrying the one that you did the least amount with.
Right. Is the
day you're going to need it, and you're going to be like, man.
I promise Murphy's Law applies. So you will be carrying the gun you've never actually shot before because you think it's cool and it's light, and you left your reliable gun at home. So yeah, that definitely. And to answer the revolver versus semi-automatic.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of revolvers. I never have been. A lot of gun stores and firearms instructors particularly throw them on females because they're simple to use.
Yeah.
And they're real simple to reload. Because they don't have the hand strength to chamber around on that. And that's just a training issue. Anybody who can hold it and lean on it on something has enough weight to chamber around. So it's a training issue. It's garbage. I do not like revolvers in the slightest, but they do work.
Right. And there's Clint Smith, for instance. You're familiar with Clint Smith?
No.
He's, basically been teaching firearms since the Chinese invented gunpowder kind of thing, right? Been out there forever. He makes a great case for, old guys and old guns and they work and all this stuff. But even he is saying, I've been doing this forever and I can choose to do that because I have the ability to do so. So if you're interested in it and you love the history and you love the guns, then
that's a different reason.
Well, right. Then be dedicated enough to put the work in. You're
making an emotional reason because you are gravitating to being a cowboy. Great.
Well, great. Good for you. But even he's saying then put the time and work in to make yourself as proficient as somebody can in a series of afternoons with a Glock 17.
If you're going to bet your life on something, bet it on the best technology available. And the most reliable technology available.
Yes.
Rather than something your heartstrings are attached to.
I'm reminded of the last pistol class I went to where we have a series of range commands. We're all shooting and the guy running the 1911 is just constantly reloading. And the instructor was like, oh, and this was last year. He's like, oh, if only it was 2018 and we had modern technology that allowed us to hold more than 8 rounds, and you're like, but it's a good point, right?
But when you guys all went dry, he could throw it at somebody and hurt them because they're so darn heavy.
It's right. It's heavy.
Yeah. It's a better club than a firearm. But anyways, so I'd like to break away from firearms and I'd like to get back onto a zillion other things that we can talk about. I know we've been on air for an hour and 13 minutes, but we really wanted to talk about some of the more challenging things out there.
Yeah.
And, so that website that I mentioned, which was
I found the federal one. It's the United
not
States National Sex Offender Public website.
That one will work, but it's Family Guardian Watch or FamilyWatchdog.us. I want to believe. Try that.
Yep, FamilyWatchdog.us.
FamilyWatchdog.us
Okay.
is a great tool to find the pedophiles in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right. And with that website, when you put it in, and we're going to put a link here in the bio on this thing, and you'll be able to go there and you can check who is a pedophile in your town.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And for those of you who live in communities like apartment complexes or condominium complexes where you have a high rate of turnover, and there you should be going to that website once a month. And you should be checking it with your kids, and you should be checking it with your school and who's watching your kids, the babysitter, the daycare, and you're going to find them all around there. The great thing about the website is you're going to see the maps light up like a Christmas tree. And when you click on those bubbles, and we'll do a special on this where we just dive into this, and I'll share my screen. But it'll show you their picture and what they did, whether they were 18 and they dated a 17-year-old and got a raw deal, or if they're a monster like Epstein.
Yeah.
So again, just a really, really, really valuable tool out there. So some of the other things that we want to talk about, again, we're in the workplace violence spectrum here, and, Trident and Shield is basically, we pay our bills by training organizations on how to prepare for, prevent, respond to active assailants, workplace violence, and the such. What I'm hoping for this channel is this to be for the individual user, for the person who woke up one day and said, hey, the world isn't as safe as, I thought it was yesterday.
Right.
And I want to do everything I can. Like, I've got a baby girl who's 6 months old at home. Right. And my whole world changed with that, it just, and now, we're going to be doing some specials with Lauren on how to be a mom, like how to walk around with your kid and be responsible.
Yeah.
And we're also going to go places and do a lot of cool things where we're streaming footage on, what I would do in this environment, that type of thing. So, we're going to talk a lot about, you're going to hear us talk a lot about situational awareness. You're going to hear us talk about firearms. We're going to talk about, again, like I said, I'm kind of just starting on my prepper journey. I mean, I've got my military training and, life experiences and stuff like that, but, it's something that I'm starting to take very seriously.
Yeah.
What food that I'm going to buy, how much food, what am I going to do for water? Like we've got a Berkey water filter at home, which is amazing, which, we'll talk about that and we'll show you a picture of it. And that's basically, I can dump toilet water in there and I'm good.
Yeah.
Or my pool water, I can literally dump pool water into that and it's this big.
Yeah.
Right. And this round and we can drink that.
Yep.
So, and just doing that type of stuff. And then, talking about, I'd like to do some product reviews here. And if there's anything out there you want us to, we want this to be a two-way communication with you guys. I'm not here to talk at you, right? I want to answer your hard questions. If you want to send me a picture of like a room in your house and you're like, Jay, I'm thinking about barricading this room. How would you do it?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I would 100% be down for that.
Yep.
And we won't say your name. We won't say where you're at. And we'll just say, I would move this here. I would do that. And that's why, if you're a parent, our schools are not prepared right now. They are not even close.
No.
Like Parkland is the norm and everything that's more prepared than them is the unicorn.
Yeah.
So I want to, talk to parents and, we're going to do some events that are just out there to educate and PowerPoints and like full on free webinars here for parents to tell if your schools are prepared or not.
Yeah.
People are blown away by this.
And this is, obviously a bit more getting back to the core mission of the company. And there's so.
Thank God.
But,
I should have known better.
Everyone
My
else
first
in the
guest should have
company
been Lauren, and we would have stayed right on
So
point.
I know. What were you thinking?
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone else in the company is like, oh, thank God. Okay. But there are so many things that you can do at an interpersonal level. There's a great book. It's called by Pat McNamara, who's a former SOFD Delta guy. And it's all about.
So do me a favor,
Yep.
drop the acronyms and spell them out because I can't stand people who speak government speak here. So make it user friendly to people who've never even heard of what that is.
So Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. That's
the creme de la creme.
Creme de la creme of the Army Special Forces.
Well, the joint services. I mean, they've got everyone
way better
there.
than Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
No,
better than me, anyways. That's for sure.
Right. So they're on a level with Naval Special Warfare Development Group. And these
I don't
guys
even know what that is.
which no one knows what that is. Doesn't exist. No one showed up to arrest me. But basically these guys are absolutely some of the best war fighters and most lethal people that the United States is able to produce. And he, he was an operator all through the Cold War and did a lot of different really cool things. And so he actually wrote a book that's all about becoming your own, your own executive, your personal protection detail, right? So starting at the personal level and doing everything you can to protect yourself, and then moving into the family, and then moving it into your extended family and the community, and basically building those layers of your protection onion. That is not a Trident Shield thing, by the way. That is just a Chase just coined that right now, and I apologize. But it's a great book to sort of start your thinking process on what you're doing and why you're doing it. Things that are simple to do, that aren't super expensive, and then moving on from there. We
need to make sure we put that on our Amazon store, right?
It is going to be on our Amazon store right
Awesome.
now, actually. Yeah. But the reason I bring that up is starting at the personal level. The book is called Sentinel, by the way, and by Patrick McNamara. You can look it up. It's on Amazon. It's on our Amazon store. But the idea is that I think this personal protection or school or church or home or however people are looking at it, daunting to them as a holistic idea. And it doesn't need to be. There are so many things you can do for little or no money. It can be mindset. It can be daily practices. It can just be discussing plans and making plans, asking questions to people like Jay, and getting those good answers, and then just it's building a plan. It's building a mindset. And yes, there's grandiose and extravagant things you can do which dramatically increase your safety down the road, but start where it's accessible, start where you're comfortable, and anything is better than nothing, because the thing is just to get started.
Okay. So Ian, for those of you guys around, who was the one who brought up the key, that her key worked in his door, he's saying he can't find that and he might have to retract it. So we're just putting that out there. And again, we don't want to put out bunk stuff. That's why, we just want to hold everyone accountable to what we say here and try to give you the best info out there. So, as far as, what our schools are facing, let's just talk about that. Our schools, I believe they want to do the right thing, or a lot of them want to do the right thing, but they're so overwhelmed, right? That, in this, day and age where everyone gets offended at anything, it's like a part-time job for everyone to get offended out there. If they train, they get screamed at them for training. If they don't train, they get screamed at them for training. And, too often, they do the minimum lowest standard because it's the least headache for them.
Right.
And if you do the math, more than likely they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Right. But that doesn't have to be this way. They don't want to traumatize their kids by giving them a bunch of scary training, which there's so much training out there that is scary, but it shouldn't be scary. Like, our training is not scary. Our training is empowering. Yeah. And, one of the things that makes us so successful is how we simplify everything. You're never going to hear government speak gobbledygook from a Trident Shield guy, except for Chase over here, who'll drop, things. But the rest of us, we all speak plain English, because you don't know who's going to pick up your EOP, your emergency operations
an
plan.
EOP.
And I'm describing it, an emergency operations plan, which is your playbook of what you're supposed to do when an emergency happens. Right? It might be a janitor. It might be the front desk girl. It might be whoever, right?
Somebody, 11th grader. In the building. You never know.
You never have any idea what's going to happen there. So it all has to be done to a level where the common person can understand it with very little knowledge of beforehand.
Yeah.
So again, it's all about simplifying things, and it's all about, what I want to do in all the training that I do is I want to train you to the best standard that you'll sustain.
Yeah.
Right. That is the key. You have to sustain it. So I can go into like 40 hours of, all the stuff that you'll never do again and it's gone. Whereas if I can teach you something that you'll use every day, or a tool, or, that you have, that's something I know that'll stay with you from seeing it once.
Right.
Right. And you'll have that, and you'll sustain that, and you'll know that knowledge, versus, the 52 step, self-defense move that's gone once you walk out of the room.
Yeah.
Which is another thing. So, are there any other questions out there? I see Lucas Stanza joining. I see Mike joining. I see Mike. I am afraid to pronounce your name. Traglia. So I'll put that out
He
there.
took a stab at it, guys.
Matt Kofik. Danny again says in Germany this year they broke up 2 child porn rings. It's a worldwide problem. It really is.
It is. Yeah.
It really is. And that's why, if we can't agree on child porn, what the heck can we agree on? Right? Like that's why ABC.
You say that, but apparently,
spiking a story because who is. It's just
who may be implicated in that? Yeah.
Well, they did it because they didn't know who Epstein was. Supposedly, no one was going to care. Any child porn person we should care about, right? And there's some great organizations out there. Deliver Fund is a great one, and the guys over there who are guys I worked with, former SEAL guys. It's a nonprofit that busts up rings, and there's a couple other SEAL ones. I don't know their name off the top of my head, so I apologize. But they're all great and really great noble causes to support. But again, so I know we've been all over the place in this show because of the election yesterday was probably a little bit more political than most, and but that's something we're willing to weigh in on. I just don't want it to be all about that. I'd like it to be 10%. That 20 maybe, but not all that.
I think Lauren says we already hit our 10%.
Yeah, we hit our 10% for the year today.
Yeah, that's right. So, but you guys definitely
premiere episode, right?
Yeah, but for sure, any questions, and obviously, this will stay on Facebook. So if you see this later and ask some questions, try to answer you too. But one thing I did want to talk about is what kind of conversion. So say somebody works for a larger company, they have a good EOP in place and an emergency action plan. EOP? No,
there's emergency operation plan, emergency action plan, the crisis management plan. There's
however you want to phrase it,
right?
And so they're familiar with that, and they'd like to implement something maybe for their neighborhood. They've got a group of like-minded people who live together, or their church or something like that. But obviously funding for that kind of organization is drastically different than with the company they may work for. Are there good tools that you'd recommend that they could either go to management or maybe just pull some stuff, things they should be looking for that may apply more than others, something like that? Basically, what tools would you recommend, things you recommend they look for to start building their own plan for something smaller scale?
So you're talking about, like, say, a small church, or a small family-owned business.
Yeah, because people are in the company, they care, they want to be a part of it, but maybe they're not part of management, they're not part of the guys in the company that established that plan, but they got the training, they recognize the value, they want to bring it elsewhere, but they don't have necessarily the money to do that full scale.
Right. So let me clean up something here with Ian.
Yep.
He said I had the facts wrong. Geiger, I guess is her last name, testified that she put her key in the door and realized it was unlocked. Thinking someone had broken in, she drew her gun and entered the apartment. Right. So again, I just find murder to be far too hardcore. But I won't rehash that. To answer your question to what smaller organizations or people need to do. Well, one, I would always start with training, right? And training can be really, really, really affordable. Our training is ultra affordable. And the more people you get trained, training's a force multiplier.
Right.
So whether you have a company of 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, you now have 10 people speaking a common language.
Yeah.
Understanding advanced concepts.
Yep.
Right. Understanding a foundational base that they can all now act on. So their mind switches a different way. They're recognizing things and they start problem solving. Go. Like, hey, I don't know if you noticed this, but the parking lot's pretty dark at light. Can we get some lights out there? Stuff. So it's just so darn empowering to start with training. As far as, EOPs, there's some templates out there on FEMA's website and OSHA's website. They're pretty terrible to do. We do them. Our EOPs are pretty cheap for smaller companies. The more complex they are, the more expensive they get. But for a small company, it's pretty easy to do. Once you have a template, it's developing that template and understanding what has to go in there. So that's something that we do.
Yeah.
And then also, taking a look, a lot of people want to hire their cousin Vinny, who is a cop for a day, to do this stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Vinny's a great guy, but there is a lot to this. There is, laws, statutes, building codes, insurance complexities. There's so much to this problem. And I can't tell you how many times where we're the second consultant in coming in to clean up someone else's mess because they hired their cousin Vinny who does this on the side.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's kind of, it's just one of those things you want. If you're going to do something, make sure the person you're using has the depth of knowledge.
Right.
And then is relatable, so that they can actually transfer that knowledge.
Well, like you're fond of saying, there's nothing more expensive than hiring an amateur.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it.
If you think hiring a professional is expensive, hire an amateur and see how that works out.
Yeah. Well, and I understand that's a hard lesson a lot of people have to learn because they are trying to have that cost savings, but there really is a truth to the fact that whatever you think may be worth protecting, I promise it's worth the money to do it right. It's not. Well, it's really not one of those things that's worth being. I don't want to say cheap because I understand like, hey, everyone's broke, right? Got it. I'm not saying that you should magically have more money, but it's worth establishing a realistic budget and doing the best you can for.
What drives me insane is the head in the sand approach.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm not even going to think about it. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to act on it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to just ignore it.
Yeah.
And therefore it'll never happen to me or anyone I care about. So the odds of an active shooter happening to you are slim.
Right.
Right. Very slim. The odds of violence happening to you or someone you care about is 100%.
Yes.
Right. 100%.
Yes.
And so if you can, if good training, like the training that we do is based around, hey, I'm going to train you for the nuclear war of violence, which is an active assailant.
Right.
But everything that we train our people on applies to muggings, rapes, abductions, home invasions, domestic violence. It applies across the board.
Yes.
So there's no downside to this training.
Right.
Yes, you take it and you're great. You're blessed. You never have an active shooter happen to you. But the odds of somebody or you care about or yourself having some kind of violence that one you might have been able to avoid if you knew what to look for is the key.
Yeah. I mean, the best defense is never being involved in the first place, right? And there are some great video repositories out there where you can watch tens of thousands of surveillance camera footage of real life violent encounters, and a alarming number of them could have been avoided outright by some situational awareness or deciding, not to go stupid places with stupid people and do stupid things at stupid times. And again, I'm not trying to victim shame or something, right? No. Like we all make mistakes. We all do dumb things. We all go out after 10 PM, right? Like, hey, right. So I'm not saying to not do those things, but there are very specific things that you can be, as long as you're educated, to like, oh, while I'm out at 3 a.m. with my friends and we're all drinking, we won't go down the dark alley. Right. We'll stay on the well-lit street in a large group.
Right.
Okay. Like those sort of simple things, but.
And that's some of the things we're going to be doing now. We're going to be looking at, true crime footage and, CCTV and all that stuff and breaking it down with some real answers. Right. Yeah. Some real in-depth answers. There's a lot of surface stuff out there where it's like, duh. Right. And it's like, hey, no, let's get into some real answers. I want the hardest questions you guys can throw at us because that's real life. That's real life. Yep. And the hard questions are the ones that nobody wants to touch. And I really think that, we as experts have to weigh in on those. So Scott said, prepare for the worst, pray for the best, and be prepared for everything. I completely agree. And that if I had to boil this whole podcast down to one thing, I hope it's preparation and understanding the issues of today that affect that preparation. Yeah. Right. Like that's why we have to weigh in on these politics. I mean, and again, you're not going to hear me, I'm going to do my very best. I'm going to pray to Jesus to not beat up on one side or the other. But, I just want you to understand the complexities and the repercussions of decisions that we make, which may be politics or political issues that affect how you need to prepare. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a succinct way to sort of bring this all back around. There are such a large number of things that can affect your immediate local, national, state. If you can't carry you can't carry a firearm, what are you going to go with? Right.
Yeah.
So if I only, the answer to everything's a 45. I don't even own a 45, but that tells you everything right there. So unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, I have a ton of 40 ammo left over from my law enforcement days. But, you know, you're not always going to be able to carry a firearm.
No.
Right?
And in fact, you know, people may not think of this, but there are, unfortunately, based on our Constitution, this shouldn't be the case, but there are a lot of places within the United States where you're not allowed to carry a firearm. And as sad as that is, that's much more common than not worldwide. So one of the greatest places to find ways to protect yourself when you're occupying those areas where you can't carry a gun is to look at travel training areas, right? There's lots of people. Guy mentioned earlier, actually, Ed Calderon, a former Mexican narcotics officer. All his training is escape avoidance, evasion stuff for non-permissive. And we use that term lightly, meaning basically areas where you are not a local resident and you can't have a gun. So there's lots of improvised weapons training out there. There's lots of great tips and tricks for all kinds of different things you can do to keep yourself safe from a defensive and offensive standpoint. You know, most people just don't think of that because they're like, oh, I'm looking for stuff inside the United States. Well, the training applies. It's the same. It doesn't matter if you're in England or in, Los Angeles, right? You can't have a gun. You can't have a gun.
I mean, I fly all the time and I don't want to check one and I don't want to deal with it. And it's just gets so complex. So just because you don't have a firearm doesn't mean you can't be prepared. Right. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have a secondary weapon system. Your primary weapon system is yourself. Yep. And then your secondary weapon system is whatever you can get a hold of. So, and that's something that we want to spend a lot of time on, and I want to actually demo it. So, you know, if I'm going to show you something, I want you to see it working. Yes. Right. Yes. I don't want it to be theory craft. No, so because there's so much bunk stuff out there.
And that takes you back to the martial arts stuff where there's so much theory craft out there. It's just, it can really, you know, maybe it's fun for internet memes. It's easy to make fun of, but the truth is that it can get people hurt.
Right. I mean, a lot of people go out there and, you know, they take a martial art, which most martial arts are just like ballet for dudes.
Yeah, they're sport based these days.
You know, I mean, it's basically like a version of badminton. You know, that's how effective they are in self defense. But but there are some out there that are extremely effective. Yeah. Thai boxing is one, American style boxing another, Brazilian jiu-jitsu is another.
Taekwondo?
Not so much. If a sport was designed to kick people off of horses, it's probably I don't think it was probably very effective at that either.
No, I know.
But it looks cool.
It does look very cool.
It looks super
And it gives you great abs.
It's great ballet. Yeah, great core and hip flexor strength.
That's right. Yep.
You know, but no, I don't mean to beat up on anyone's passion. I mean, it's great. It's better than nothing.
100%. Yeah, it is. But again, when you're talking about, we're not talking about people having hobbies and interests. We're talking about you doing whatever you can within your budget and your time to make yourself as prepared as possible to not die in a violent encounter. Right. And it's that simple.
And we all have lives, and this is the last thing we want to be doing for most of us. Yeah. Right. You want to get on with your life. You want to do whatever. But what we want to do here is we want to come up with whatever the lowest common denominator of training that we can do that can make you all safe, that you can sustain, that is going to give you the highest skill set possible. Mm-hmm. That's what we want to do. And it's going to be different things for different people. Absolutely. Some people are going to have, hey, I want to focus on the firearms part. Hey, I want to focus on the hardware component of it. Hey, I want to focus on, the secondary weapon systems because I don't want to carry a firearm. I don't believe in firearms. And we can talk about that. Hey, I want to concentrate on the hand-to-hand aspect of this. Yeah. Others, it's just going to be situational awareness and problem solving and avoiding. Yeah. Right. Whatever it is you do now, it should be a blend of everything. Yeah. Right. I mean, that's why mixed martial arts is the king, which it's nothing anymore because it's everything.
It's everything.
Right. If there's one thing from some obscure form of like Wing Chun Kung Fu that actually is good, great, they'll incorporate it. Yeah. That's mixed. Yeah. Right. So you take the good, you get rid of the garbage, and exactly. And that's what makes it so darn effective. What gets scary for me is when people start drinking their own Kool-Aid and they say, well, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the only answer. Right. Yeah. No, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is the only answer. Or this one is Jiu-Jitsu is great. Yep. It's awesome, but it has its limitations.
Right. American boxing is great. has its limitations.
Everything has its limitations.
Yeah.
So stop drinking your own Kool-Aid, get off it and be like, hey, you know.
Well, and you know, it's, I think most people, because we live in such, trigger warning, because we live in such an awesome, great, amazing country, literally the best one that all of humankind has ever come up with.
Yep.
Yes, we have lots of problems and we need to work on them, but
less than most.
And this is a great place. So because that's true, so few people are exposed personally to interpersonal violence that it's very easy for them to be led astray because they don't have a frame of reference.
Yep.
And two, they very easily conflate interests and hobbies with real life application. And so it's hard for people when they're looking from the outside in to really dig down and identify, oh, this probably isn't best for me. Oh, that maybe isn't realistic. Oh, this guy's trying to sell me a t-shirt, not actually help me, whatever the case may be. But you can look elsewhere where violence is a far more common event, other countries, the military, law enforcement, and see and get those really good real world examples. So something we've seen in the military ton is the real world life-threatening consequences of people drinking their own Kool-Aid, right? And in the military, it's institutional inertia. And
that's what we see in the active shooter world is everyone was doing the same thing and it was terrible. So all we did was scare the bejesus out of everyone, give everyone PTSD. We're doing unannounced active shooter drills in schools, and causing far more things because people got into an echo chamber, and they wanted to apply like a square peg into a round hole that would not work.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's turned off. I mean, that's a bias that we have to overcome every day.
And this is in no way saying that a broken clock isn't right twice a day, right? Like, I was absolutely that guy in the Marine Corps when we were learning bounding, where I'm like, wow, this is post World War II tactics. Like, what the actual bleep expletive deleted are we doing? Why are we taking time on this when we know we're going to the mountains of Afghanistan, or we know we're going to southern Afghanistan, we know we're going to the cities of Iraq? Like, it's not a guess. 100% we know within like probably a few square kilometers a year out what we're going to be doing. And here we are on a flat range, literally doing stuff that they pioneered in World War I to combat machine guns. So like, what are we doing, right? And then of course I find myself in Afghanistan, like actually bounding across an open field. Of course, right? So like, blind squirrel did find that nut that one time. Totally, right? Like, it happened. It happened once. But, so I understand there's always that defense. We're like, but it could work. Sure, it could work. But do you really want to count on that when it's your life or it's your family's life? Like, that's...
Well, and again, I think I don't want to say this the wrong way, but...
but I'm going to.
Unfortunately, when we're doing a lot of people, when they train, they're not training the right way. They're standing up and they're bounding, standing up. They're not sucking mud, scraping their face on that, because if they stick it up, it's gone. Right. Because why? You'd break everyone.
Well, yeah, totally.
Right. Yeah. So, and again, I think mastering the basics is a good thing, but what you find out is life is not basic.
Yeah. Well, it's
life is PhD plus.
Right. Yes.
And you just have to adapt and use your environment and everything around you to the best of your ability and problem solve. What's everything in life? Problem solving.
Everything. Which goes back to that classic, the old tired adage, but it's, I don't care if it's tired, it's super true. Like, the best weapon you have is your mind. Right. I just said that. Oh, I said it. Yeah, I know.
We're going to start dropping Yoda garbage on there now.
But if we can start with that basic truth, like, but what does that actually mean? Well, it means that you need to be dynamic in your thinking and creative and not ever get sucked into drinking your own Kool-Aid, institutional inertia, believing your own BS, however you want to phrase it, whatever you want to call it. Just because you read it on the internet doesn't mean it's true.
Everything.
Question everything. This entire podcast could be a deep fake.
Yes.
It's not, but it could be.
question everything and validate everything, meaning
trust but verify.
Yeah. If something we say, you're like, hey, that sounds right, go make sure it works.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe it'll work for you. Maybe it won't.
Yeah.
But, if there's we'll give you a chance for some questions here and then we'll wrap this up. So one, what you guys want us to talk about, I want to hear from you.
Yeah, love some suggestions in the comments.
Love some suggestions. If other people aren't solving stuff, you're not getting this from another channel, come here.
Yep.
We'll do it. If it makes sense and if it's, protecting people and being prepared for your family or talking about something that's confusing you, heck, talk about economic issues if we have to.
Sure.
Because that's something you have to prepare for as well. It's
Yeah.
not my forte.
You know, not mine either. I loved studying economics.
But I'll get someone in here who can talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, or if it's, you know, I don't care what it is, you know, if it's a personal challenge that you have, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Guys, if there's stuff you've seen out there, you're wondering, hey, okay, they're telling me question everything. And I'm not an expert in this. I have seen some things. I want to know if they're valuable gear wise, equipment wise, technology wise, whatever. You know, drop a link for us, show it to us, send us a picture, smoke signal, whatever works. We'd love to hear about that and try to help you out there. Cause, you know, again, resources are finite. So, you know, we want you to make the best informed decision you can. Yeah.
And one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking calls.
Yeah.
You know, so we have the ability with our equipment here to take phone calls like a radio show or whatever. And so if you got something, we're going to, you know, screen the ones that we want to maximize time. So, you know, we don't get sucked into some troll stuff or whatever. But we really do want to help you. You're not alone out there, right? The key and understand is you're not alone. You're not the only one thinking about this stuff. We all got to kind of put our heads together and try to figure out a way to heal this country and to prepare for, you know, what's coming for us at any given day.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying the end of the world's coming. I'm not saying everyone needs to be a prepper, but you know, your house could be broken into tomorrow.
Yep.
You know, you could be involved in, you know, your daughter might date a serial domestic abuser, you know, and how are you going to handle that? And, you know, we'll address all those things, guys. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed our premiere episode,
That's
episode
right.
1.
Episode
I can't
1.
wait to see what episode 1,000 is going to look like. We're like, wow, we were terrible.
We
let Chase go on like 40 political rants.
Why
and drove
did you
away
let him
half
on the
our
podcast?
viewership?
Man, episode 1,000. Well, I mean, that could be like in space. Who knows? That would be awesome.
Hopefully it's
Come on, Elon.
Hopefully it's sooner than that.
Touche.
So again, I don't want to say this is going to be daily. We will cover and we will break to events as they cover. I want it to be frequent. So again, I don't want to say it's going to be every Monday, every Tuesday, every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but we're going to put these out based on workload as often as we can. And I really hope you enjoyed this. I know we covered a lot of ground, but God bless you. God bless your family and God bless America. So thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks for watching us. So Mr. Shield, Chase, out.